Welcome back to Tears for Fears. I'm your host, Megan Shoup. You can follow me on Twitter at Megs08DFS. And I can't believe we're in the final week of the regular season. If you've stuck around all season and been watching the show, thank you so very much. It's been a blast, and I am not done yet. I plan to do tiers for the playoffs too, because short slate tiers is fun as well. So before we get into week 18 tiers, be sure to like this episode, subscribe to the Mayo Media Network, and of course check out our sponsors, Run the Sims. They help us make our tiers decisions, and they can for you too. So with that, let's get right into week 18 tiers. Before we go tier by tier and find our core plays, a couple disclaimers. As you know, week 18 this season, or the last week of the season, is the information slate. We have to stay on top of information, not just COVID and injury news, but now we have to really pay attention to teams' motivations and watch what teams could be sitting players or pulling players halfway through the game. So just stay on top of news right up till lock. That is going to be key. And I'm going to try to project who might be out or sitting early based on motivation. So you're going to hear me use the word motivations at a nauseating level. So just a warning there. But again, we're focusing on teams' motivations and we're looking for our core plays. So now let's jump right into it. In Tier 1, we have Josh Allen, Tom Brady, Kyler Murray, and Joe Burrow. And it's already been stated that Joe Burrow will be sitting this week to rest up for playoffs. So that leaves Allen, Brady, and Murray. And I have interest in all three of these guys. All three are motivated for different reasons for seeding in the playoffs. But with Josh Allen, his situation is a little different because they kind of control their own destiny and aren't relying on other things. If they win the AFC East, they get a home playoff game. So to me, he kind of has the most motivation of these three quarterbacks, and he's playing the Jets. So for that reason, Josh Allen is my Tier 1 play. In Tier 3, we have Cooper Kupp, Jonathan Taylor, Devontae Adams, Deebo Samuel, and Alvin Kamara. And in this tier, Devontae Adams, I would assume, would be rested because Packers have nothing to play for. They already have clinched first round bye. So that leaves my core plays as Kupp, Taylor, Samuel, and Kamara. And I will rotate all four of those plays, but I really think the highest ceilings here are Taylor and Kupp. I'm going to have the most exposure to those two guys. But if you're going to make me pick, I'm going to choose Cooper Kupp. He is 136 yards and 12 receptions away from the single season record. I think that is attainable. And I think his bestie, Stafford, may feed him even more than he already does. And they need this game. They need to win the NFC West and get that first round home game. So for that reason, Cooper Kupp is my Tier 2 play. In Tier 3, we have Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb, and Stephon Diggs. And I think this tier is easy to look at teams' motivations and kind of eliminate a few guys. If Joe Burrow is sitting, I think Chase and the rest of the starters will either sit or be limited. Therefore, I'm not interested in Chase. And Nick Chubb didn't even get a full workload last week. And with Baker Mayfield being shut down, I definitely don't think he'll get a full workload this week. So that just leaves my core plays as Jefferson, Cook, and Diggs. And with Diggs, he's the one with the most motivation. As I said, the Bills, if they win the AFC East. Now, I will still have some exposure to the Vikings guys. If they get a full workload, could see a ceiling performance against the Bears. So I will have some exposure there, but my favorite play is definitely Diggs. He also has some motivation in some contract bonuses too. So for that reason, he's got a lot to play for this week, and Stephon Diggs is my Tier 3 play. In Tier 4, we have Najee Harris, Mark Andrews, Joe Mixon, Deontay Johnson, T. Higgins, and Aaron Jones. And it's obvious here that a lot of guys are going to get rolled out. Obviously, Joe Mixon and Deontay Johnson are on the COVID-19 list. And then with T. Higgins and Aaron Jones, I think both of those teams will rest their starters. So that really leaves just Najee Harris and Mark Andrews. Those are my only two core plays. So I will have a lot of exposure to both those guys. It's looking like Lamar Jackson may not play again. He didn't practice. He hasn't practiced all week. We still have to wait and see on that. But regardless, I think Mark Andrews has proven to have the higher ceiling here with the amount of targets he's getting. Both Steelers and Ravens are playing each other, are still mathematically in it, so they both have motivation to play and play the whole game. But that goes for both Harris and Andrews. But again, with the targets Andrews is getting, I'm going to go with Mark Andrews as my tier 4 play. And in tier 5, we're back to quarterbacks with Lamar Jackson, Matthew Stafford, Russell Wilson, Ryan Tannehill, Carson Wentz, and Taysom Hill. And in this tier, I obviously don't think Jackson is going to play, but even if he did, I think with that ankle, he'd be limited. So I am not interested in Jackson, Tannehill, or Wentz. I think in the case of Tannehill and Wentz, their teams are very motivated, but I think they're going to lean on their running game, and I think they're going to be playing from ahead. So that leaves my core plays as Matthew Stafford, Russell Wilson, and Taysom Hill. In the case of Hill and Stafford, they are the ones with the most motivation, but Russell Wilson, you kind of got a narrative of, could this be his last game as a Seahawk? So I'm going to have exposure to all three, but I do like Matthew Stafford and Taysom Hill the best. So I went over to run the Sims in the rangefinder tool, and it's pretty close, but Taysom Hill does have the higher win rate. He is playing the Falcons, so he's got a really juicy matchup, and again, everything to play for. So Taysom Hill is my tier 5 play. In tier 6, we have David Montgomery, Mike Evans, George Kittle, Damian Harris, A.J. Brown, and Amon St. Brown. And in this tier, I have a little less interest in Kittle and Harris. With Kittle, I have less interest if Trey Lance is the quarterback. With Harris, I just don't know that they're going to push him if they feel like it's looking like they're locked into the wild card spot. So my core plays are Montgomery, Evans, A.J. Brown, and Amon St. Brown. In the case of Montgomery and Amon St. Brown, there are no playoff implications, so it's kind of a meaningless game, so to speak. However, they could both get there on just pure volume. So I definitely am going to have exposure to both those guys. And Evans and A.J. Brown are playing for playoff implications. So I'm going to work under the assumption that the Bucs are going all out, playing all their starters. Evans is trying to hit the 1,000-yard mark. So for that reason, working under those assumptions, Mike Evans is my tier 6 play. In tier 7, we have Cordarrelle Patterson, Brandon Cooks, Jalen Waddle, Tyler Lockett, Rob Gronkowski, Terry McLaurin, Rashad Penny, and Sonny Michel. And in this tier, the only one I can clearly rule out is Patterson. I have no interest in him. A lot of the receivers in this tier don't have anything to play for, but could be high upside plays. And I think they could come a little bit lower owned, and that's Cooks, Waddle, Lockett, and McLaurin. I especially think Cooks and McLaurin could come in really low owned and could put up a ceiling game. Then you've got Gronkowski and Michelle that do have a lot to play for. And then, of course, Penny, who's still getting a huge workload with the Seahawks. So, all those guys really are in play. I'm going to look at the guys who have the most to play for in this tier because it really is hard. This tier is a tough one for me. So I went over to run the Sims and I put in Rob Gronkowski, Sonny Michel. Those are the two players that have all the motivation this week. And Sonny Michel came out with a much higher win rate. So for that reason, Sonny Michel is my tier 7 play. In tier 8, we have Eli Mitchell, Michael Pittman Jr., Darnell Mooney, Chase Edmonds, Saquon Barkley, Devin Singletary, Zach Ertz, and Odell Beckham Jr. Now in this tier, I don't have interest in Edmonds and Barkley. Edmonds, I don't think has gotten into practice yet, and Connor has practice limited. So, at best, there will be two kind of a split backfield. And in Barkley, that offense is just terrible and going to be run by Jake Fromm this week. So I don't know if they'll see the end zone at all. And then, with Mooney, he doesn't have playoff implications or motivations. However, I still have a little interest there. But my favorite plays are the guys with the playoff motivations, and that's Mitchell, Pittman Jr., Singletary, Ertz, and Beckham Jr. So how am I handling this? Well, I'm going to rotate through all those guys, but if Mitchell plays, we know how much Shanahan loves him and just feeds him. So if Mitchell plays, Mitchell is my favorite play. If Mitchell doesn't play, Zach Ertz is actually my favorite play. If you look at the last time the Cardinals played the Seahawks, he went nuts. And, again, the Cardinals do need this game, and the Seahawks get eaten alive by tight ends. So then Zach Ertz would become my favorite play. So those are a couple of my favorite plays and my core plays for week 8, for tier 8, but a lot to pay attention to in this tier. That'll do it for this week's Tears for Fears. What do you guys think of my lineup? Be sure to let me know in the comments section, and please let me know your favorite play in tier 7, because that, as you could tell, was the tier that I was struggling with the most. Now, before you get out of here, please be sure to like this episode, subscribe to the Mayo Media Network. Of course, check out Run the Sims to help you make your tiers decisions. But then go over to fanspeak.com. I have a tiers simulator over there with all these core plays plugged in. So that way you can run through and get some good tiers lineup suggestions. So with that, also remember, we will be back for the next couple weeks for playoffs. Short slate tiers are fun too. But in the meantime, let's go make some money in week 18, and I'll see you back here next week.